you have a PhD, and I think it was breath-brain connection. You're a neurophysiologist, but then you're also willing to expose kind of yourself to these substances in a way that you have personal experience. So what factors, and I think you said it was in 2018 that you kind of, it sparked, or at least it became a part of your lexicon that this is something that like had been researched, but had kind of been buried and now was resurfacing. So what were the first steps you took, having a more traditional kind of modern science background, when you started to hear more about this? Did you double down on kind of the science side of it, or did you start to expose yourself to the more traditional side of it, which has been around for thousands of years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually came to learn about these different compounds and how they were being used today through a friend of mine who's a former ranger who was dealing with a lot of his own issues with regard to traumatic brain injury, trauma, mental health, physical health, all these things. And he and I were really close, and he was telling me how he was planning on going to a retreat down to, I think for him, it was Costa Rica at the time, through Heroic Hearts Project, to do ayahuasca. And I was like, what? What? Like, what is that? And he was telling me about it, and I was super skeptical. I was like, this sounds like a bunch of snake oil and very weird, and I'm not sure I believe it. And so I was like, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You have your experience while you're there doing your thing. I'm going to go research this. So I looked up the organization, and I also started to do some research, the medical, clinical, scientific research, not Wikipedia. And I dove into published articles that were actually fairly recent, that were describing what it is, what ayahuasca is in particular, and highlighting some clinical studies that had been done in Brazil and some other areas. And I was like, whoa, there's rigorous science behind this, first of all. And second of all, the potential to really help people like my buddy and others. I was working in the SOF community at the time, and obviously had lots of friends who had been blown up and who were dealing with lots of other mental health and, physical health issues that were really challenging and to address through the traditional channels. In fact, a lot of them were getting worse on the treatment path that they were given through the traditional channels. So I was blown away, and I was like, man, this has great potential. Let me go read about these other compounds, because again, my, DARE, keep kids off drugs brain started to turn and reflect on, well, these things were supposed to be bad. How are they helping people? So that then led me down this other research path into these other, like psilocybin and LSD. And there was not only the historical literature that I found, but then the more recent research and clinical studies. And I was just like, whoa, why am I just now hearing about this, working in the space that I'm in, and with the neuroscience background that I have? Why am I just hearing about this? And why is it not mainstream, especially for these communities in need, like the veteran community, the first responder community, people with backgrounds of trauma? Why is this not mainstream? And so I started to reach out to different people to see what others knew. And then I connected with Heroic Hearts Project and Jesse, the founder. And of course, my buddy got back from his retreat, and he was like a totally different person after that. So then I was a believer from the sense of seeing the actual change in this person that I knew pretty well. And that was surprising to me as well. And so when I reached out to Jesse, I was like, hey, I don't know what I can offer you, but I am here to help. This sounds incredible. I'd love to learn more. And I became their director of research. He basically was like, this is great. We're a new organization. We'd love to have you join our team and help us with some research. And so I was like, yes, that sounds great. I would love to do that. So I joined Heroic Hearts Project in 2018, late 2018, early 2019 as the director of research. And we started to do some research on ayahuasca in veterans, looking at changes in the gut microbiome, looking at long-term changes in symptoms and personality and different things like that, some of that's been published, but the gut microbiome stuff we're still finalizing, which hopefully that paper will come out this year. But through that process, Jesse was like, well, do you want to go on a retreat so you can see what it's like and experience it yourself, but also witness what it's like for other people? And I was like, I'm a little nervous, but sure. yeah, like why not? If I am advocating for something, I should know what it's like. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying everybody needs to go do everything under the sun in order to be able to speak about it and help people. But for me, I didn't even have any close experience with psychedelics that I could even draw upon at that point. So for me, it just seemed like something that would be worthwhile. And to be fair, I was dealing with, I'm human too, and I've had my own traumas, and I actually was really struggling at the time with my own internal shit. I mean, honestly, like I had a lot of stuff going on. I learned at a very young age to cope in very unhealthy ways with the challenges of life and with trauma. And so I ended up developing a lot of addictive issues over the years that included everything from alcohol and pills and various types of eating disorders that were really harmful. And nobody ever really knew because one, of course, there's shame there. So I never really talked about it. But outwardly, I was successful and nobody knew any different. Nobody knew otherwise. And so I was like, well, if I can hide this from everybody and prevent the shame that would be associated with actually talking about it, then that'll make me feel better. And then also maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I can keep lying to myself and say that I don't really have a problem if like outwardly I still seem to be performing right athletically and academically and all of these things. And so for me, it was kind of a time in my life where I was really getting honest with myself about my own path of self-destruction and recognizing, wow, all these other things that I've tried to heal myself with over the years, meditation retreats, for example, yoga training and all of, therapy, all these different things, they helped, but they never really fixed the core problem for me. And I was curious about the potential after everything I had read about these substances to potentially help somebody like me too. I mean, I didn't have combat trauma. I didn't have the same childhood that a lot of these other people had growing up. I had my own types of adversity, but nothing like some of my friends were dealing with. And, I was like, well, if there's hope for me, then maybe there's hope for everybody because, it's not just the combat veteran that can benefit from this type of approach. So I went down there both from a curiosity standpoint, the academic side, and then very deeply personal side of things too, hoping for my own healing. And really had no expectations going in, but was not, there's no way you can prepare for something like that until you actually do it in the sense of you don't know what it's going to be like. Like it's unlike anything else that you've ever experienced. And so, I just went for it. And it was really, really challenging in a lot of ways, especially because I wasn't used to experiences like that of being sort of not out of control, but yeah, I mean, you kind of have to surrender and let go of the control of what's happening physically to your body, but also to your mind. And you can bring curiosity to it and you can sort of direct your experience a little bit, but you're really, there's a lot of letting go that has to happen. And that was new for me. And a lot of the experiences, each night in this particular case, like Heroic Hearts Project, the way that they do these retreats, often, regardless of where you go, whether we were in Peru for this, but Mexico, Costa Rica, wherever, there's like a period of say 5, 6, 7 days, and you have multiple ayahuasca ceremonies throughout that week. We did 4. And that entails, nighttime ceremonies. They can last 4 to 6 hours where you're having this really intense experience, and it's waves, you feel like you're coming out of it and then you go back in, and you feel like you're coming out of it and you go back in. And sometimes it's extremely challenging. Sometimes it's scary, difficult. Sometimes it's beautiful, the most loving, incredible, happy experience you've ever felt. I mean, there's the range of highs and lows that you go through in these types of experiences is incredible. And that happens every time. Every night is very different. You never get the same experience twice. So what happened last night may have nothing to do with what's going to happen this night. And that's something else for people to know, is that when people share their experiences, that's helpful to kind of understand maybe the range of what people go through, but by no means is that sort of a roadmap for what your experience might be like. So just know that as people are explaining this to you, if you're curious around this, that your experience is going to be totally unique. But I had a lot of things happen for me that week that were really powerful, that allowed me to see myself and my life in totally new ways that were extremely helpful, extremely cathartic. That people often talk about the powerful perspective shift that happens. And, the cliche is that it's like 20 years of therapy in one night. And I kind of hate that, but I get why people say it, because it's for those of us, like I grew up in a very, with a very rigid mindset about emotions and experience, and, not really in touch with a lot of emotion. So for those of us in that arena who are maybe cut off from a lot of the really intense emotions and have avoided feeling them, sometimes in therapy, when your therapist or whoever you're working with who's trying to get you to access stuff, you might be super willing to actually do the work in that moment. But because of all your years of conditioning and patterning, it actually might be really hard for you to access some of that, even though you're willing, because it just is so foreign, and your body and nervous system is not used to going there. Whereas when you do something like this, it often breaks down these walls that are barriers to accessing some of this really deep, rich stuff. And sometimes it's forced upon you for better or worse. But for me, that was really helpful, because I got to feel things and access things that like I normally couldn't, and honestly didn't even know it was there. So that was powerful for me. But some of the guys, so I was with a group of, it was mostly SOF veterans, but Heroic Hearts Project service, like they help all veterans, period. You don't have to be a SOF, community member for that. So we had a couple of guys who were not SOF, but it was a small group, and everybody came with different baggage, with different stuff, different intentions. And everybody got something incredibly profound out of that week. And there were multiple people there who were on the verge of suicide prior. And it was really, they were having a really horrible time, and they were not okay, and they didn't know what else to do. They had tried a lot of other things and were really skeptical of the pill route. Maybe they had been down that already, and it scared them with how much worse they got, or maybe they were just reluctant to try it to begin with, but they had tried lots of other things. And whether it was severe depression or suicidality or real physical ailments, all of these guys came out of that with profound, good, beneficial changes. And to see everybody's face, pictures of us when we first arrived, to the joy and the relief and the just peace that you saw in people by the end of that week. It was, if a picture, say a picture says 1,000 words. It really, those pictures alone were really powerful to witness. So that was my experience. And I've had multiple experiences with ayahuasca and psilocybin and others over the years that, for various reasons, drew me back to the medicine and learned different things at different times to help with different intentions. But that was my first journey with all of this. That was, it was really powerful. So, and Heroic Hearts Project is still doing all of that work today.